Hi, everyone, and welcome to this, which will be the 30th and final officially convened conversation as part of the next 4 years. Um, I'm Tom Creed. I'm a director of opera and theatre, and I uh, have been the curator for the next 4 years, which is Ireland's contribution to the 2023 Prague Quadrennial, commissioned by the Irish Society of Performance Designers and produced by Once Off Productions. Um, Thank you to everyone who has been part of the project and also everyone who is joining us this evening to discover it. Um, Before we kick off, just to give a little bit of information about the project. So the next 4 years was uh, a film and a publication and a series of conversations where we challenged the performance designers of today to imagine the theatre of tomorrow. We filmed 2 days of conversations featuring the participating designers Kieran Bagnall, Lian Bell, Katie Davenport, Mel Mercier, Rob Maloney, Emer Murphy, Jack Phelan, and Sinead Wallace at the Abbey stores in Finglas in May last year. And then also each designer was invited to imagine an image or an action, which we staged at Access Ballymun, and which also, and those two things together kind of made the film. The film was screened at the Prague Quadrennial, and then it also traveled around the country over the last couple of months. It was accompanied by conversation and also by a publication designed by Niall Sweeney. The film was filmed and edited by Michael David McKernan, who is here with us. Thanks so much, Michael David. It's great to see you. The film is now available to view online. If you haven't watched it so far, it's at ispd.ie and it will be there for the foreseeable. So you can watch it, you can discuss it, you can share it with people who haven't seen it. This session will be recorded and it will be published alongside the film on the Irish Society of Performance Designers website. If you would prefer not to be part of the recording, then you can keep your camera off during the event. If you make a contribution, that will be recorded. But if you want to sit and listen with your camera off, you won't be part of the recording. And there'll also be a couple of screenshots taken for social media. So it'd be great to see as many faces as possible, so that we're talking to humans and not just to photos. But also feel free to leave your cameras off for any reason. I just want to make a couple of thank yous, particularly to our funders, the Arts Council of Ireland and Culture Ireland, as well as Design and Crafts Council Ireland. I want a huge thank you to the ISPD committee, Chair Catherine Fay, the PQ subcommittee chaired by Deirdre Dwyer, ISPD's associate producer and communications manager Noelia Ruth, and arts consultant Trinity Giver, who were totally instrumental and massively supportive over the last year as we've been making this project. A huge thank you to Emer Murphy and everybody at the Abbey and at the Abbey stores for the massive contribution to the project, as well as Niamh Nicahur and everyone at Access. Huge thank to Magdalena Borzakova and the whole PQ 2023 team in Prague, as well as all of the venues and festivals that hosted us around Ireland in the autumn. Huge thanks to Maura O'Keefe, Orla Flanagan, and the whole producing and support team at Once Off Productions, especially our technical director, Ronan O'Shea, and our line producer, Grace Morgan. Thanks so much for everything that you did to make this happen. Again, I've thanked Michael David, but also Russ Kavanagh, who took the photography for the publication, and Niall Sweeney, who designed the publication. Thanks so much. And also the hundreds, if not thousands of people who engaged with the work in Prague and around Ireland, as well as the 8 participating designers, Kieran, Lian, Katie, Mel, Rob, Emer, Jack, and Sinead, who played a huge role in conceiving this with us, in creating the film and then in participating with events in Prague and in Ireland. So before we kick off, we're just going to take a couple of minutes to watch the trailer of the film, and just a quick clip of highlights from the Prague Quadrennial, so you can see how the work was exhibited there. And then I'll introduce Lian, who will one last time take on the mantle of moderating a conversation with us, where we can think about endings, but also about beginnings, and about the next 4 years and what might happen. If you're not speaking, keep your microphone muted, just so that we don't hear your dogs or your surroundings. But you also feel free when we're speaking, just to unmute yourself and jump in, or use the raise hand icon if you want to be a little bit more polite. So yeah, thanks, Noelia. Let's go down memory lane for a moment.
What's interesting for you now in your work, and when you think of the next 4 years?
What I'm particularly interested in is how we support our artists, and how we support our freelancers.
Being on the edge, which is the preferred place where I like to be, no matter in what domain it is. I feel most comfortable being uncomfortable.
In the next 4 years, I would love someone to have invented an ever-expanding warehouse.
It's better a million people doing zero waste imperfectly than one person doing it perfectly. Like, you can't do things perfectly, but we have to start somewhere.
Yeah. But just go nimble and weird. Get a bit weird as well.
Of all of these conversations that we've had, both in the creation of the project and subsequently, have been conceived and facilitated by the brilliant Lian Bell, who contributed to the project as a designer, but also made a huge contribution to the overall kind of conception and planning of the project. I'm really grateful to have spent this time working with Lian on this. Thank you, Lian, so much for being part of this and through the whole journey of the project. And yeah, one last time, I'm gonna hand the space over to you to hold a space for us to have a conversation for about an hour and a quarter about the next 4 years.
Right. Thanks, Tom. This is so as Tom said, we've had many conversations at this point, all in person. So this is the first time we're doing something online, which of course is a completely different dynamic. But we're really keen to make sure it's a conversation rather than just people putting questions into a chat window. That said, if anyone feels most comfortable writing things in chat, please do that. Like, feel free to use it. If you want to jump in, please do jump in. Just making sure you mute yourself afterwards. If you want to put the little cartoon hand up, do that. Or if you want to put your real hand up, do that. Yeah, so we've been using, when we did the tour of Ireland and the conversations around that, we were using a format called the long table, which is a little kind of set of etiquette rules. But one of them is there may be silence and there can always be laughter. And in this situation, there may be like awkward talking over each other and forgetting to turn your mic on. And that's all part of the joy of Zoom. So no worries. And it's brilliant to have so many people here who are involved in the project in different ways. And I suppose to start off with, in a real like going down memory lane, I'd love to just hear from people. What was the experience like of being part of it? Because this is such an unusual event for any of us to have been involved in. What was it like? Anyone who wants to take up the baton.
I'll go. I'll take that. I thought it was incredible, as I sort of mentioned before.
I honestly believe conversations can change lives, and the right conversation at the right time can completely divert our attention or convert our careers or everything. So I find the whole process and the whole idea um, extremely inspiring. And I've been sort of writing since the event, since our first sort of gatherings. I've been writing sort of thoughts sort of based on that, and sort of based on sort of the idea coming up to the event, because none of us really knew what sort of form it would take until we began. And again, that was fantastic, absolutely, brilliant. And sort of had the conversations in that. And you can hear it in our voices how cold that Abbey store is, Emer. But no, it's kind of ruffled the coals for me a wee bit in the fire of kind of where I'm at in my own career and what's ahead and the next 4 years and all that kind of stuff, but also trying to go, well, what can we do? And I'm desperately hoping, and I know us in this at ISPD, we're looking at avenues to kind of build upon this platform and move forward from those kind of conversations, because I know a lot of the some things, there's recurring themes that came up during our conversations, and there's also new conversations. So I'd love to kind of try to gather that and kind of see what we can make and see what we can be proactive about. That's the thing I kind of took away from the whole experience, that it really sort of fired me up for certain questions and obviously conversations that came up, but trying desperately to kind of also be proactive to getting answers for those somehow. But yeah, it was an incredible experience, and hopefully it will continue to be so.
And I think we'll definitely have time today to sort of dig a little bit into like what's happened since, because I think, like you said, it was a bit of a catalyst, I think, for a lot of us, or at least it
absolutely, yeah. I
think, like you said, shaking the coals of just like, oh yeah, we can change things, we can do things. I think there have been changes and movements in the meantime. But before we get on to like what's happening now, anybody else want to chime in about what their experience was? And I'm including, obviously the sort of production team and it's not just the designers.
Yeah, I can go. Oh, sorry, Mel, do you want to
go? No, please, Rob.
Oh, go, Rob, go.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. What I found most interesting in terms of trying to create something for exhibition is going from a theater designer, which is very much a collaborative process, to then try and work out what it is you're trying to say and trying to and how to present that idea as an individual artist in a space that is also shared by many different people. So that was very much a new thing for me, like having always been working with other people. And I found it quite insightful, and it's a very much a reflective process of understanding what it is that you're trying to say through your work. So yeah, I'm still actually working out what that is, of course, but it was nice to start somewhere.
Right. Thanks. Mel, you wanted to jump in as well?
Yeah. Similar for me, Rob, I think, as well. And I think first thing I want to say is that it was very nice to be asked to be involved. And then to end up sitting around that iconic table in a room packed with objects, packed with designers, was a new experience, actually, and that conversation, as Kieran says, with other designers, but also in that place. I mean, it's such a surprise to walk into the Abbey stores and to be overwhelmed by objects and to be in the company of objects and around a table at a conversation. So that was really refreshing, actually. and the idea to move it out of a theatre, for example, into not a neutral space, a place that's related, but to expand that part of the theatre making process, and for us to be sitting in there, I think was really, really wonderful, surrounded by the history in a way. And then the other thing, of course, to highlight was going to Prague and being part of the of PQ, and to continue the conversations, but with the designers, but now maybe a combination of formal and informal, just getting to know people better was really wonderful. And to do that in the context of the wider designer community in the international community in Prague, that was a first for me. And I really enjoyed that. I found that very inspiring, just the fact of it, the fact that it happens on such a large scale, and the fact that design-led work is just normal in that environment. I was, yeah, I must say I was very, very taken by that, and it increased my appetite for more engagement with designers, and more exploration of other ways to make work, and perhaps other ways to make work within the more established theatre, an appetite for more conversations as part of the process of theatre making, which is one of the things I think that we discussed, and which perhaps will take some time to change and to make happen. But I'd love to see more of that.
Right, thanks, Mel. Apologies, the fan on my computer has decided to go crazy, so if you can hear that, I'm sorry. Yeah, anybody else want to have a reflection on what it meant for them? Emer, go for it.
Sorry. Hi, can you hear me? Well, for me, there was two things, three things maybe. One was that to us, the stores in Finglas, well, to a lot of people in the Abbey, it's where the stuff is. It's just a very simple, basic thing. But if you are a nerdy person like me, who sees and hears the stories of all of those things, and each one is an individual, and each one is important, and to see other people react to them who've never seen it before, and who don't just walk in and go, God, you need a skip, because that's what most people say when they see it. And to see it not as a problem, but as something inspiring or just valuable on any level was a huge boost to me personally. And then the other things that happened were, I think one of the big takeaways from it was how many of the stories from the people that spoke to us in Prague from all around the world were so similar, and that we were having such universal experiences. That was a huge takeaway for me. And the third thing was hanging out with designers, as Mel says, because I feel always like we had at the beginning of our discussions to warm up, we had a huge conversation about imposter syndrome, and I definitely felt like an imposter in the design cast of this film, because I don't see myself as a designer, but as a facilitator for designers. But hanging out with everybody and hearing everybody's thoughts of things was just massively inspiring. So that's my takeaways.
Yeah, I think just to pick up on that, Emer, I think that was a really important thing that happened, which was a kind of a recalibration of assumptions, I think, within, that there's a kind of a set of assumptions of who is creative and who isn't, or who is an artist and who isn't. And to platform each of us within this project, but then also to platform all of us within PQ, and to platform Irish theatre within PQ, and Irish design, obviously, recalibrated some of those assumptions that I have, And I think recalibrated the way we are seen by some other people as well, which was kind of vital, actually. The other thing I wanted, like for me, one of the things that's been kind of, I mean, I'm the only one who got to experience this, well, apart from Tom, really, and Orla, which was going around to pretty much every single local screening in Ireland of the film, which were followed by conversations with people. And I know conversations are kind of my obsession at the moment, but the conversations we had in Prague and the conversations that we had in different places around Ireland were extraordinary, actually. And in Prague to hear how excited other designers that we'd never met from around the world were to just sit down and have a cup of tea and chat, and how much that space was valued and was needed within this very busy, stimulating, sometimes a little bit overwhelming, amazing, like backdrop of ideas and performances and talks. And, you know, there's so much going on. To have that moment of sitting and talking together was actually valued so much by the people who came. And like you said, Emer, that understanding, that realizing that we're in similar situations or struggling with similar problems or similar challenges, that for me was massive. And I hope is something that we'll be able to sort of keep going, just to understand how valuable that is. You know, those conversations are. Does anybody, I don't want to put you on the spot, but I might put people on the spot. Just because I see Dee Dwyer there, and I'm interested to hear from somebody who was witnessing and came to one of those conversations. What sort of struck you about the whole project?
It's a funny one because this is the first year since 2007 that I didn't get to go to Prague. I was too busy doing work for PQ. So I realize I'm one of the really lucky people who've been at that with kind of for most of my professional life. I was introduced to it as a seed on the Rough Magic Seeds program, and got sent over then and got to see and be there for the first Irish one. And so I was very jealous and had lots of FOMO for not getting to go this time, which was my own scheduling conflicts. But I was really happy then to get to watch the video and participate in one of the conversations. So in a way, that felt more egalitarian and democratic, because not everybody can travel to Prague. So that felt like it got to bring the conversation home, which is a really brilliant part of that. And I think probably you are one of the lucky people, yourself and Tom and Orla, who got to see the full jigsaw. So maybe I only got to hold 2 pieces of it in my hands. So I get to watch the video and have a conversation in Cork, a 3rd piece now maybe. But you guys get to have all of those pieces, and I suppose that's a bit of responsibility as well, which I think a lot of the people who went to Prague are feeling that. So you're kind of expressing gratitude and gratefulness for having been there, but maybe you're feeling a bit of responsibility for holding that for everybody else as well. Which I think is a kind of a beautiful thing that may have emerged from this, is the idea that us individuals are also collectively responsible for our industry and the work that we're making. So I think that's some of the stuff that seems, the work we're making and the circumstances and the ways in which we make it, because that seemed to be some of the really strong stuff. So as much as it was brilliant to hear people talk about pushing the boundaries of the art, some of the stuff was much more about like caretaking for the people who are making the art. And that felt really like if those 2 things can be the thing that ISPD look forward to and try and nourish for the next 4 years, that feels like a really good outcome.
Totally, a kind of a sense, I think, a sense of increased agency. There was a phrase that came up in one of the conversations early on, which was something about what, I think actually it was in Cork, what do you do when you're waiting to be asked to dance? As a, you know, this idea of like we're sitting there at the side of the room And eventually somebody's going to come over and say, would you like to dance with me? And you get up and you dance with them. And I think what Mel's talking about and has been talking about through the whole time is, you know, maybe you're the one who initiates the dance. You're the one who starts dancing and see who wants to come in and dance with you. So that sense of agency, that sense of our position within an industry, within a community, I think was strengthened, which I think is amazing.
And it's good to see, I mean, I don't know all of the people who are on the conversation, but it's good to see people who aren't just designers involving themselves in these conversations or being invited. And that's something that's really was part of the, if you go to a smaller ecosystem like, say, Cork, which is the one that I was able to jump in on, then you wouldn't really be able to have a sustained conversation with just designers, or just the designers who'd be available that day anyway. But you can, if all of the other members of the ecosystem come and talk as well, and then it's great to see the designer be the person talking in the room, because quite often, though I am often a person talking in a room, quite often designers aren't the people who are the one talking and being listened to. So it was kind of lovely that that agenda is the one that was like for a minute with the spotlight on it.
Yeah, actually I might be this is the thing about Zoom, is I kind of feel like I need to pick people out, but I might actually pick out Tom, just because obviously you were, you know, you are the person with the overview of the whole thing, but you are a director, and I was wondering how what has shifted in your perception, or have things shifted in your perception about designers, the role of designers, your relationship with designers, thanks to the project.
Yeah, it's kind of slow burning. It's I mean, a couple of a couple of great things have happened. I've ended up actually working with a number of designers who were part of the project as designers on theatre productions for the first time. So that was a kind of fantastic thing that came out of it. I mean, I think one of the things that happened was kind of almost straight away, I started to like plan some I started to kind of try and start working on a bunch of projects a bit further in advance. And like that, it became clear to me that was completely impossible, because like no one was booking shows, everyone was so busy like in the short term. So in a way that I kind of found myself right up against some of the issues that were being worked on. And like if I'm being asked to direct a big show 10 weeks before it goes into rehearsal, like everything is being made in that kind of whirlwind. And if everyone is being asked to make work at that kind of notice, like everyone's schedule fills up, so no one has time to be thinking about things down the line. And so actually how to the importance of kind of starting to advocate for the kind of structural change that we were imagining became really clear. I mean, the other thing that became clear is that there is something also kind of kind of frantic but kind of joyful about sort of jumping in and making a big show really quickly as well. And that also, I'm also, not everyone has the kind of necessarily also has the freedom to kind of work in that way, which I'm also kind of conscious of, as a director who is relatively busy and sometimes gets paid well for the work that I do, and doesn't have caring responsibilities beyond a cat who's pretty self-contained, that I'm able to take opportunities that not everyone is always able to take up at short notice as well. But I think the kind of this question about the project was always conceived as actually the project was the next 4 years. Like we made a film, we had some conversations, we made a publication, we went to Prague, but the project was not just a project about the next 4 years. The project actually is the next 4 years. And so the idea of a kind of curation which was generative and provocative and catalytic, and that the real what we've made over the last year, and this being the kind of ending of actually it's just the beginning of the next 4 years, and the actions that will be taken, and the cases that will be made, and the practices that will be evolved starting now, beginning of year one of the next 4 years. You know, all of my hopes for the project are, you know, that those kind of small conversations and big conversations and small actions and big actions somehow start rolling forward and accumulate, you know, people and ideas. Yeah, that we think really of this moment as a beginning much more than as an ending.
Cool. One other aspect I'd love to just bring in, and I'll come to you, Mel, after that, just so you raise your hand, is and it's really pivotal to the next 4 years, is the aspect of the students who were involved in Prague, who came and had their own exhibit, the Irish students who had their own exhibit in Prague. And then also quite a few students who turned up at the conversations that we had, and young people who are starting out in theatre. There was a couple of really great meaty conversations about the future of theatre from the perspective of somebody who is just starting out, talking with somebody who's been in it for decades, around those tables that we had around the country, which was great. So I'd love to pull Niall in briefly. Niall Ray, maybe if you could just, as the person who organised the student exhibit, but also would have the most contact with the students who were involved, maybe you could give a little bit of a reflection of what the experience was as you understood it through their eyes.
Yeah, well, first of all, I wanted to thank OneSoft for looking after the students so well this time around. Thank you for the bursaries and the accommodation and everything, and the payments even for them, because they, I don't know if any people who didn't go to Prague may not know, every session, there were 2 sessions a day, and every session was invigilated by one of our students that visited. So thank you, OneSoft, for doing that. It was very important for them. Yeah, I'd like to say that I really deliberately reached out to the whole island of Ireland, north and south, and we had students from 5 different institutions eventually getting involved. Let's up that for the next time. Let's get more institutions involved the next time, I'd say. It was an invaluable experience for them to see, you know, that huge festival of design for performance that is the PQ, and it was invaluable for them to be, even though they'd seen the film, the students kept coming back to the table very, very often to take part in the sessions, because they were really interested in people from all over the world, as Emer has pointed out and Lian's pointed out already. Hearing the thoughts of people from different countries, they had friendships with the Americans, with the Germans, with the French beside us. Like they really latched on to different countries around. One thing I would like to point out is that Ireland and Germany together organized the first ever Pride Festival, a PQ, with a Pride parade all the way through the venues and around, we were very proud to be the Pride organizers with Germany. And the conversations that happened around the different venues, I only got to Belfast and Sligo, but again, the students were there, and again, the students were very interested. Now, going forward, one of the things that was brought up was, how do we make a contact? How do we get into the industry? That was one of the things that was brought up. And I'm sure there are some threads that could be brought together. I know Catherine and Noelia are working on the assistant program with ISPD, but I think there might be some more threads that we can pull together. I had my festive drink with Kieran Bagnall a few weeks ago, and we were talking about somehow pulling threads together from north and south, somehow pulling threads from young practitioners and young companies into spaces, because the other thing that kept coming up was space and time to make design-led work. And I think one of the solutions for that might be looking at bringing educational institutes and young artists and young companies together to give them the free space and the free time in exchange for perhaps working with students. And they're the students from all over, well, let's say it's all over Ireland, whether it's Queen's University or UCD or Sligo, that students then get to work with young companies and up and coming artists and directors. And that may help solve a couple of the issues. But that's the kind of conversation that Kieran and I had a few weeks ago, that if we can somehow manage to pull these threads together, we might begin to tackle some of the issues that are brought up in the film somehow. So that's where we are. And that's definitely, as Tom says, this is definitely the start of the next 4 years for that, for me.
Brilliant. That's great. Mel, you had raised your hand there. Do you still want to jump in?
Yeah, actually, I had just seen Niall on the screen there, and it reminded me. That's what I was going to say, was that it reminded me that one of the greatest sort of discoveries for me and pleasures at PQ was the student space, broadly speaking, and the work that we saw in there, but in particular the Irish students who were bolder than anybody I found in the space, and the most hardworking of all of the people there. And they seemed to be the ones who were pushing the envelope most. And yeah, as Niall says, they were in around the conversations. And that was fantastic for us, I think, around the table. So I did find that quite inspiring, and maybe inspired by them to be bolder, and to the extent that maybe the more established designers might act as role models or show the way forward for younger theatre makers, then I think maybe that it makes me realize that there is a responsibility on us to be as bold as we can be for them, for the future. So in a sense, what I was thinking was, we're talking about the next 4 years, but for them it's the next 40 years.
Absolutely. Yeah. When I think,
Yeah,
I mean, oh, sorry, go on, Emer.
Me being brazen, I was just going to add to that, being bold and being innovative with sort of the least amount of material of most of those. There was so much money in the American Pavilion. There was so much in it and involved in it. And what the Irish students were doing with the sort of simplest materials, and the how they broadened it out and narrowed it down at different times to focus it in and broaden it out again. They did incredible things with those materials that they had. So just, that's particularly innovative, and sort of the heart of theatre, really, sort of.
Yeah, and the self-belief they had.
Yeah,
the total focus and commitment to the task, whatever it was really, yeah, that was really, really wonderful, I thought.
There was, as Tom mentioned before, that the film itself was filmed over 2 days in the Abbey Stores in May last year. And that in itself, like, that, it was a 2 full day shoot. And like, props to Michael David for actually making a really watchable and interesting and cohesive piece of work out of, I don't know, well, it was like 12 hours or something of footage. Like, it was mental, it was huge. And it was us talking about everything. I mean, obviously we had sort of pre-planned the conversation to a degree, but essentially it was a free-flowing conversation. And for those of us who took part, we could have easily gone on. You know, we got to the end of 2 days and there were still things we wanted to talk about, because this was the first time, I think, for any of us to have experienced that and had the opportunity to talk like this with our peers. And also to say that not everybody around the table knew each other at the start either. So that was a really interesting dynamic. And the topics were, I mean, hopefully everybody's had a chance to look at the video. If you haven't yet, please do, because it's really there's so much in there. It touches on so many things, and it's really, yeah. Anyway, I won't go on about how great it is, but there's, you know, everything from ecology and being sustainable to sustainability in our practices longer term, growing older as artists, what will happen if and when we retire, to mental health, to AI, or, you know, the liveness of art, of theatre, of live performance. I mean, you know, it was packed with lots and lots of different things. And I'm interested to hear, out of the people who were part of that conversation, what has changed in your thinking about some of the topics that we were talking about? Have things shifted in the last whatever, 9 months, 6 months? I can't count. No, everyone's still exactly in the same place as they were.
I was just going to say, I'm trying to be more vocal. I'm trying to be more vocal in the moment about things. When we're talking about human sustainability and saying things about, just to try and articulate without being negative, because sometimes it can be seen as being negative, but trying to articulate the difficulties around something that seems a very simple ask but isn't. It's a tightrope. It's a real tightrope to walk. Because I'm there to do a job, so I am a facilitator. So at the same time, to get across the difficulty and to get across, okay, we can't give you that, but if I did it this way, or if I, you know, that there's a conversation to be had, as opposed to a this is what I want, make it happen thing, demand. Because it's not that I'm getting demands. What I mean is, in myself, I tend to react as though I have to make that happen. And now I take a pause maybe and just think, okay, I can't make that happen necessarily without great cost to either myself or to something else, but maybe I can reapproach the question and put forward an alternative version of it or something. It's difficult though, because I'm very used to just going, yep, no problem, no problem, no problem, because that's my job.
Niall, jump in.
Yeah, I mean, the whole sustainability thing has gradually been bubbling up for everybody. I know Kieran's been doing great work at the Lyric. I know the Lyric themselves, as an organization in Belfast, have decided to use only recycled timber and even recycled paint. I think it was on the Christmas show, like paint, not paint that they took off something, but paint that had been left over. And I've definitely been driving that in teaching the students. We've also banned the use of foam core, except for the final box in 4th year. So for 3.5 years, you're not allowed to use new foam core anymore, except for the final big Abbey model box. But then we try and recycle those as much as we can into making other boxes. And when they're actually building their sets, they have to use stuff that's about. We don't, which is what we did with the student exhibition in Prague. We used stuff that was already about. I added a few bits of timber to it just to expand it, but all of the metal junctions were used in 2019 in Prague. The other thing that's come to my mind, and again, it's going back to that space and time thing. And I was just thinking about some of the emails I've been seeing about the AGM coming up in a few weeks for ISPD. Is insurance seems to be an issue for spaces, and maybe insurance is an issue for us as artists and for young companies as well. And I don't know if there's something we can look at in terms of ISPD, in terms of public liability insurance for members of ISPD, or, you know, I think there's a conversation to be had about that, about access to space needing to be insured. In Sligo, I've already had that conversation with my head of department, who's promised me that will be covered easily by the college for any guest artists that come in. So we have to have that conversation then with Queen's University, which I am having it soon with Queen's University. Maybe there's a conversation to be had with Trinity or UCD or the Lear about giving over space if we can provide insurance, which seems to be an issue. And also artists themselves, us as designers ourselves, going into a space and wanting to play with the stuff you know, to make it simpler and have the stuff that's there, rather than rushing and going to Amazon, as was said in the film, that we take our time and we play with the stuff. But I think we might need to look at insurance for time and space to play with the stuff. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. Kieran, did you want?
Yeah, no, I suppose since Prague and since the initial conversation, I think, and obviously, and also coming up towards the end of last year and the beginning of this year, I'm sort of trying to galvanize my sort of spearheading of the welfare, of a welfare system or something, because this industry is terrible at looking after people when they're sick. And I had a few moments kind of coming up to Christmas where I had family members who weren't well, I wasn't well, and it's always that kind of like, oh, sorry to hear you're not well. So when are you going to get the plans to us? You know, this, and so there's obviously there's a kind of social move in terms of working around that anyway. But I would love to kind of open conversations. Even I don't know if anybody knows of a company called Shine in the UK, which is for lighting designers. So lighting designers, when they're ill or if they're unable to work, you can apply to Shine for it's not a bursary, that's not the right word, but for some help, basically, financial wise, you know. So you can get a month's rent or something. So I'm really started sort of, I'd say, coming towards the end of last year, just trying to really focus on how do we start the wheels that moving, you know, which I'm terrible at, because I don't it's such an alien language to me in terms of funding and that process. But I ferociously trying to think about that in terms, I know we spoke about like the working time directive, but focusing on some sort of welfare system for people, even if it's a pot of money or something, you know what I mean? Anyway, it's trying to focus on that, you know, more, and try to be proactive with that. There's more to be done, you know. There's a lot to be done, but this, you know, that's certainly one of the most important elements I can see, is sort of supporting ourselves when we can't work or are not in a position to work, you know.
Yeah, brilliant.
I
just wanted to talk about things that have progressed for them.
Yeah, it's worth saying, I suppose I'm about to direct the first sustainable production at the Lear. So that's going to come up in February and March, and some people on the call are also working on that. And it's the first show where we're being asked to make a commitment for 50% of materials to come from recycled or reuse, and 65% of materials to go on to be recycled or reused. And Sinead Wallace, of course, who is the kind of sustainability lead at the Lear, who was part of this project and was really instrumental in this project also. But it's going to be an interesting experience in terms of kind of thinking about how, you know, working at that scale, where I guess there's a lot of borrowing probably going on anyway, but also probably not a lot of storage. How to, you know, what I think is great is that, you know, we've talked about students already, and that the students that will work on that project as heads of department and in construction and costume and lighting will have the experience of managing a kind of process from beginning to end, where sustainability is hardwired into the whole project.
That's brilliant. I had an experience after PQ, so it was in September this year, of designing a small show, which it was a little bit like an illustration of all the things we talked about not working, and it was not through anybody's fault. It was just one of those, like, seeing how narrow the margins are for error when things go wrong, particularly on a small independent company show, and trying to reuse materials that were found that were previously used. But yeah, illness being one thing and knocking people out, and so the margin of error is being eaten up by that, and then difficulty trying to find production staff, which was another big conversation we were having. So again, the margin of error there was being eaten up, and it ended up me literally in the foyer of the Peacock, cutting out pieces of card essentially to make the set from the couple of days before the show was on. Like it was kind of bonkers. It worked.
It was beautiful. It looked fabulous.
If you went any closer to it, you would have seen the sellotape. But it was a really interesting, for me, it was just like, here's all the things. They tried to do their best. Like we all tried, and certain things got in the way. Things like the cost of renting risers at a time of year where everybody's looking for risers was really prohibitive. That you know, somebody getting sick and suddenly sideswiping what a small company can do in response to that. Like all kinds of little things. And it really just made me go, oh, like it's not a case of we can push through and bully through when these kind of things happen. Like they're not good for the art, and they're not good for us. And there's some really fundamental things that need to change. But the other thing that I wanted to say on a totally personal level, and this sounds ridiculous. This is like living up to the Irish stereotype. One of the things that kept coming up in conversations was around the pub, essentially, and the place that people have those kind of conversations where you're still with your working team, but you're outside of rehearsal space and you're talking in a different way, and how valuable that is for the process of thinking together and also bonding and, you know, being part of a team together. And I've been doing a lot more work, I suppose, as a facilitator more than anything, around that kind of thing of like really just getting people to go to a pub together. They don't have to drink anything alcoholic, but just to sit in that space, sort of reclaiming it. And I think in a funny way, it's a very particularly Irish thing. And actually, it's something we should be quite proud of. The pub isn't necessarily a place to go and get drunk in. The pub is a place to go and have those interesting conversations in. And the value of those conversations has been, for me, thrown into spotlight after disappearing during COVID. So weirdly, that's been one of the things I've changed in the last while, which sounds ridiculous. I've been going to the pub more, but it makes a difference. Yeah, highly recommended. Anything else anybody wanted to throw in of, Rob?
Yeah, like this year, I worked on 2 shows that did like an alternative form of touring, where instead of doing this like different venue every night, or like you split up your tour for a different city each week and you're just going for one night and then you're coming back to Dublin or something, you're going back out to another venue the next week, where they just decided to do 3 places and then have 3 or 4 full days of tech, which is just 9 to 5 tech, and then do your show for the next 4 days. And it was the whole idea is to market it more broadly, so then you're trying to get people to come to actually travel in to see it, as opposed to you traveling out around the place, which also I just realized maybe there's a question mark around that. But yeah, it was, I think from a welfare perspective, it seemed like a nice thing for the people working on the show to just have to do 3 weeks of work as opposed to 7 weeks of work to reach the same amount of people. And then to not have to travel as much. It's quite nice. I don't know exactly what the metrics are afterwards in terms of how it kind of balanced the books in terms of energy and things like this, but at least people are trying like alternative ways to present work, which is quite nice.
Totally. I should also point out that anybody who wasn't directly involved in the project but has seen the film and would like to say anything about something that struck them or something that they took away from it, this is also, the floor is open to you as well. There's no obligation, but you are very welcome to join in the conversation if you'd like to. And similarly with the Once Off team, because I know everybody has their own practice and their own, you know, that you do many things other than just what you did in this particular role for this event. So if there are things that you've taken on into your practice, it'd be really interesting to hear from you guys as well. I'm just checking out hands up. No. Okay. To kind of push it into the, like Tom said, the project was the next 4 years. We're already in the next 4 years now. I suppose this is kind of going back to an original question, is if you could imagine yourself 4 years from now, so the start of 2028, and think about, just to sort of ground yourself in that, think about how old you'll be at that point. Think about how old the people who you're closest to will be at that point. If there's kids, that's obviously a really big marker, how much they've grown in 4 years. With all of this knowledge generated through conversation and all of these starting to move changes that I think individually we are starting to do, what would you love your working practice to be like at that point?
I'll speak.
Great.
I'd love it to be really well paid. I must say, every January, I have a bit of a down in January where I think, is there something else I can do? So after 30 years of doing this, it's still that January. I mean, I think touching maybe on what Kieran talked about, and not to, it's about putting a value on it and trying to figure that out, and how we can, it's how we can make people understand that, and how we can make it work by saying, I have 2 days a week on this project, and therefore I can do a number of projects maybe at the same time, so that can cover costs. And also that idea of starting things earlier, I suppose, because the idea of designing on the hoof is very bad for the environment generally, and unsustainable, I guess, in energy, and not often, it doesn't often have the best outcome design wise. So I don't know, that's the dream. I think if we can, increase fees generally, so that it's not as frantic for everybody. I mean, that's a huge thing. And because even in Prague, I thought it was really interesting talking to the companies that weren't maybe more Eastern Europe. They work as part of theaters, so they work, it's a job. It's something they get paid for all the time. So the freelance is particularly something we deal with, which made their outlook quite different. I mean, I thought it was amazing, and I thought how seriously they took the work was just incredible. It was really inspiring, but their methods are different, and we could learn from that. I think, I don't know how that would operate here. But I think it is about value. I think it is about standing up to what we do and how we do it, and how good we are at it. Yeah.
Brilliant. Yeah. Anybody else have a vision of themselves, January 2028?
Could I just follow up with Catherine there, ask Catherine, and throw that generally? How does that? How might that happen, or how might we work towards that? Who decides what the fees are and what the value is, and how do we have conversation with, how do we begin to dialogue, to be proactive? Seems to me that would be an incredibly valuable thing to do over the next 4 years, is to try and set up those. I mean, those conversations that may be happening. I don't know, because I still feel maybe you know, relatively inexperienced in the sector. But you know, is that something for ISPD? Yeah, how
It is.
might it happen?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's top of the list in ISPD.
Yeah.
Trina, you might want to come
Yeah,
in.
so Mel, we did, sorry, my internet has just decided to blank. We did some work on that this year we started work on it, and we had some discussions and did a survey about developing a rate card. It's a piece of work that needs quite a lot of attention and some resourcing, but how it could be done is to start a conversation with the producers as to what their current rates of fees are and where they are prepared to go, and then to develop a transparent rate card for the different levels of producing houses, like for example, for the Abbey, for the Gate, for the independent production companies, for the Lear, for the different levels of production for the commercial sector. So it is doable, and it is a job that could be done. And then on top of that, to advocate and to raise the profile of the designer in general, and that's a PR job. So the ISPD in its strategic plan, which we worked on together, and it's published on its website, raising the profile and raising the fees for the designers was very clearly articulated. I think it was 2 years ago, actually, by the members when we did that session in the Lair. So it has been on the agenda of the society for quite a while, and it's just resourcing the rolling out of that needs to happen.
Yeah.
Thanks, so it's all possible. Yeah. But it's a long game. Like it's a long game.
Does it include the Arts Council in that conversation?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It includes all the funders, and it includes all the producers, essentially, as in the producing houses. Yeah.
Exactly, because that's what producers will say. Producers they're just fed from the top, you know. So
look, everybody's hands are tied. Like we're all in an ecosystem where there's nobody consciously, you know, withholding money from anybody. It's just
exactly.
It's a society, but absolutely, it would include the funders. Absolutely, yeah.
Grace, do you want to jump in there?
Yeah, I was just going to say that's something that really strikes me in kind of new work is, you know, the importance of having designers involved in the development phase of the piece. And often, you know, there's like this, I think, perception that you can't go to a designer unless the work is finished, you know, unless you have like a script to show them, or, you know, they should come and see the work in progress to see if they like it and want to come on board. But I think definitely in the last while, I find it critical to have people like designers at the very start of the idea. And yeah, and I suppose I'm interested to see if that model of working will happen more, because I think obviously, you know, we still have the kind of writer, director, designer model and like the, you know, pre-existing text model, and just how those models will change and when they'll be kind of represented, I suppose, in the bigger houses. And I think unless that starts to happen and there is more representation in the bigger houses of those models, it's very hard to change those ways, to change that way of working, and to make sure that people also get paid for the development of the ideas and not just the 6-week process that they're getting paid for.
Totally. I think the thing that you know, money is at the root of so much of this, but money also creates time and creates space for ourselves. I mean, sort of psychological space. Sorry, Niall, I saw your hand go up there as well. Jump in?
Just one thing. Well, actually, two things. In 2028, I'll be retired. I'll be gone. But what I would say is that when I started out years ago, I had an agent immediately, and that agent always insisted that if a director's name was on a poster, that my name was on the poster as well. And I don't know how that disappeared. It doesn't seem to be the case anymore. I remember in the Lyric years ago, it was always the director and then the designer were listed one after the other. And that kind of has gone by the wayside. I don't know, how do you as designers feel about that? Do you think you should have your name below the director on a poster or in the online publicity or whatever it is?
Well, I think that's a retrograde step that has been taken
think?
by some of the I don't know how widespread it is, but it certainly has happened at the Abbey over the years.
Yeah.
And it's hard to understand. It's hard not to think that somehow or other it's tied into value.
Exactly. That's what I was thinking.
Yeah. I don't know, it's hard to know in an institution sometimes who's making decisions and what the reason is. But it is, I think that's been, I've been very sorry to see that happen, I must say. And absolutely, yes, I think that, of course, designers should be credited, should be billed on posters.
Yeah. If the director wasn't credited on the poster, then that's okay. But for me, it was that if the director was credited, then
I mean, there's all that favored nation stuff and everything like that. But a good agent will always try to do the very best. But what you be there's only so far they can go, because if a production house comes back and says that's how we do it,
exactly,
then there's really nothing you can do. So they fall back on favored nations and look for billing and crediting elsewhere. But it seems to me to be the opposite direction of travel to the one that we are talking about desiring over the next 4 and now the next 8 years, I would say.
Yeah.
Anybody else want to jump in with some far out predictions? Valentina, great.
Yeah, I just want to say just 2 things, very small, like coming back to what you said before. So the thing which always struck me when I watched the movie is the fact that we have some of the best designers in the country, and the conversation is mostly about something so kind of grounded. So it feels like there is a lot of things we need to sort out before we can kind of lift ourselves. So, and then it goes back to also what Catherine said, that in other countries, the structure is stronger, which is good, I think, for some, in a way, because then people get better paid. It's more difficult, I think. I've been working here most of the time, but it's more difficult to get into the structure. I love the fact that in Ireland there is so many freelancers, so many small companies, and so many small voices, independent. So I think that if in the next 4 years we could stay the same while also just improving our situation, so that's how I hope the next 4 years will be. I also, this is for myself, I hope I will wait less for people to invite me to dance and start the dance myself. But so yeah.
I think the networking, I mean, networking is always a bit of a word that causes people to come out in a cold sweat. But essentially what we've been doing over the last number of months is creating quite a strong network amongst ourselves that wasn't there before. And that is, for me, that's the absolute first stepping stone to being able to then demand change, really. So the strength of this being a network is going to stand us, I think, in good stead over the coming years. So I suppose I'm just sort of saying, like, let us stay connected and stay in conversation with each other.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. Can I just unpack and just expand on that a little bit? So how do we feel as a group of people here is the best proactive way to create that network? I mean, is it, because I know obviously through ISPD we have tried different avenues of sort of meeting up with each other, or Zooms and stuff. How do we, have we any, or like, is it a WhatsApp group? Is it an online thing? How do we all stay in touch without, I don't know. How do we make that network that works for everybody? I know that's an impossible thing, but
is it crazy to have a conversation continuing on the ISPD website? Was that a madness thing? I don't do social media at all. So
yeah.
you're speaking to someone who
That's
never gets involved in conversations like that. But I don't know. Is that a...
I was about to propose more pub like Lian, but
like an online pub.
Online pub, very good. Yeah, it's that sort of thing. It's for people who don't, because we need to kind of get the information to different. Everybody receives information differently, so it's just about trying to link those things up to the benefit of everybody, to the benefit of the greater community. And yeah, like I said, we have been trying for years to find something, but I don't know. Has anybody any bright ideas? Go on, Mel.
Well, no, it's not a bright idea, Kieran.
Oh.
I say that from the get-go. But in a way, I think the brightest idea was PQ and bringing all that together. So sort of feels like we're having this conversation now with one of the waves of energy that's come off that. So but that's only going to get us so far. I mean, I think it's clearly done brilliant work. And I know myself that it has given me an opportunity to develop relationships and become, part of, give me a greater appreciation of designers and the work, and which, I carry now into the work itself. I think so. I think that's very good, and it helps me to understand that, when designers get in the room to work together, that, you have to be, in a way, you've got to be very singular, because you've got to be razor focused, because we're specialists. And in order to do the best work, you need to be focused. But at the same time, this has shown me or amplified for me the need also to appreciate and to try and dialogue with the other designers in that process, or over a longer period of time, etc. So I think all of that and all the things we've spoken about and all the work that you're doing and others are doing, picking up on the things we spoke about is brilliant. It feels to me like, another pulse of some kind, like PQ, every so often would energize us again, because I think it's just human nature that we get pulled into lives and work and all the complexity of that. So this fires us up, gives us kind of enthusiasm and energy for a certain amount of time. So it's like we need to redo that. But the other thing, I suppose, comes back maybe a little bit to what Trina was talking about, and this particular focus of ISPD on the pay and condition stuff, that whether there is a way, maybe this is already happening, again, forgive me if this is already happening, but that, we can't do all of these things, and that we only have a certain amount of energy. And maybe the thing is that, over the next 4 years, that ISPD would try and hold on to some of this energy and enthusiasm that we now have, to focus it on like 2 things that we would collectively try and achieve over the next 4 years. And one of them might be this thing about which you're already way ahead on, which is the money side of things. And then the other could be anything else. I won't even suggest it, because there are many, many other things. So that rather than, because it's a bit overwhelming to think of all the things, as Valentina said, like, if the conversation was so grounded, there seemed to be so many structural things that we needed to get right, that one could detach from that a little bit. So yeah, I would just wonder whether there's a way to streamline this energy that we've taken from this pulse, and to try and keep our ambitions great, but not, not modest, but clearly focused over them, and then organize an event maybe in a year's time or 18 months' time where we come back together again, something really happens, to keep us going, to give us more, to give us more momentum. That's just a thought in response to a general direction of travel rather than any specifics.
Totally. One of the things that will be happening this year is that the ISPD got some money, and we're still, so they've asked me to help out with devising essentially gatherings, which will possibly be partly online, partly in person, ideally all around the country. And I think for me, some of the most important, or what's kind of really important for this, is to show up and to bring people with me, like to encourage other people who maybe haven't been part of these conversations yet to come along and be part of that. So I think that's, you know, I suppose I'm encouraging everybody that once we have an idea and once we have a plan of what those gatherings will be like, that we continue, that we ask you to show up and to bring people with you, so that that momentum can keep going, because the momentum only goes if you know, we can't just sort of passively sit back, any of us, and expect it to continue. But I think that idea, Mel, like you said, of another sort of high point of some kind to aim towards isn't it really interesting one, maybe to discuss. I'm aware that we're now nearly 10 to 7. We're going to finish at 7, and I know there's a couple of people who want to say closing little things, but I wanted to just make sure that everything that needed to be said was said. If anyone who was either involved in the project or has been observing the project in any shape or form has a burning thing that they would like to add in at this point. Niall.
Just a very simple thing. I know we have, maybe Noelia and Catherine could speak to this. I know we have funding for a conference coming up soon, don't we? Maybe that could be related to a gathering.
Yeah, I mean, as Lian says, we've allocated funding to the gatherings in terms of, we were talking around festival times as well, that would be, because it's about trying to get people together. Because I mean, Noelia has organized a number of events, and it's, you know, it started very small. It's really, I'm so happy to see so many people here online. This is incredible. So it's kind of trying to gather that amount of people in person is really difficult. So yeah, no, absolutely it is. And the Skino Fest that we're hoping to do in March, we would certainly hope to see as many designers there as possible. But Lian's thing would be around the country as well, you know, so that it isn't just Dublin focused.
Absolutely.
Really important.
Lian, if you want any help in Sligo or Belfast, you know who to call.
I will absolutely be calling you. I will be calling every single one of you. Just so you know.
We already have support from Blue Raincoat to host one of the gatherings there. So thank you, Niall.
Right. Any other important things? Michael, David, great.
Hi guys. Just for me, just because it's so rare to have sort of a debrief or anything like this after a film project. Just wanted to say thanks to all the designers for speaking so eloquently and articulately during the filming, and also for making the edit a lot easier, because nobody really spoke over each other during the shoot of it. That was my only concern, that it would be sort of a free-for-all and it might be a really nightmarish edit, but it was actually very pleasant. So thank you.
There was a moment where I suggested to Tom that we do a 24-hour conversation and have like slabs of beer in the corner. And I think probably the talking over each other and being less eloquent might have become an issue in that situation. So I'm glad we didn't go down that route.
How much fun did you get for those gatherings there?
Well, you need a 24-hour pub.
No, I also just want to say, yeah, well done, Michael, David. The edit was stunning. It was beautifully shot and really, really carefully, and it was really beautifully done. Beautiful work.
Thank you. Yeah, if anybody is a Succession fan, that was a slight reference. Succession was concluding just around the time that we were shooting it, and I said to Tom, I was like, what if we do sort of Succession style documentary zoom ins on people? And he was like, yeah, let's do that. So a little nod to Succession.
Excellent.
But everyone was a bit nicer.
Oh, sorry.
I'm just saying everyone was a bit nicer than in Succession.
Noelia's just put that link to the survey about the gatherings there. I think anyone who signed up to the ISPD mailing list has already got it. So if you haven't already, do spend a bit of time with it. That would be great. Any final last thing before I hand back to Triana? Yes.
Sorry, I hope I'm not stepping in on something somebody is about to say, but I'm aware from reading the newsletters there are places coming up on the committee. So also consider, if you're not already considering it, joining the committee. So people who've been involved in the project who haven't sat on the committee yet. So sorry, Catherine and Valentina. If you were going to say that, I just wanted to make sure that if people are interested in the direction, that get yourselves to the AGM.
Right. Anybody who hasn't spoken yet who would like to say anything, just to make sure there's a little bit of space there. Orla, great.
Just really quickly, just to say that it's brilliant to hear about these platforms, some platform going forward with you, Lian, steering it. It sounds fantastic. And I think in terms of my experience on the road with the project, particularly in Ireland, but in Prague very much as well, I think just reflecting how everyone was so grateful for this platform to connect. Be it online or be it, you know, our most of our events have been in person, but it was a really tangible feeling in the room and really quite special. Like I think of Belfast particularly and Galway particularly, and in Galway, actually, there was a couple of audience members. I mean, they were far more than audience members and they were extremely articulate. But I just wonder as well, could it be really interesting to try and connect in with audience members as we go forward on the journey and just not forget they're out there, I suppose. Yeah, so that's it. Thanks.
Great. I guess I will hand back to Tom.
Sorry, Lian. Chris actually had his hand up there.
Oh, Chris, sorry, I missed you. Chris, go for it.
Oh, hi, everybody. It's so good to see all your faces again. I just really wanted to quickly chime in and just say that how inspiring it was just to be at the table with all of you designers, talking through so eloquently, articulately, and abstractly about ways to handle all these conversations and challenges. And I think there's so much to be said for that in-person meeting. There are a lot of really interesting versioning and established social medias that do kind of create a platform for ways to share where people take the inspiration that they get from those meetings and like kind of carry that energy from one period to the next in the interim between two meetings, if ever that does become something that's a little bit more feasible to implement. I would be happy to have a conversation with anyone about that. But beyond that, it's just all of you guys inspire each other. That's very clear. You definitely inspired me. So I think that having that forum and that conversation ongoingly is really the best way to help everyone, I guess, evolve their perspective as we get further through these 4 years. So thank you for that.
Brilliant. Thanks, Chris. Tom, I'll just hand back to you and let you do the closing bits.
Sure. Thanks, Lian. Thanks, everyone, for being with us this evening and for being part of this journey with us. And kind of as we said earlier, yeah, this isn't the terminus. This is just us putting it in as at a station to refuel and to load up more passengers. Yeah, I look forward to the next 4 years and to discovering where things will go. I'd love to maybe for final thoughts hand over to Catherine just to maybe say a few words on behalf of ISPD. And yeah, maybe to get us excited about what might be coming up from the society as well.
Thanks, Tom. So I won't keep you long. It's only 2 minutes. But I just wanted to say how proud ISPD is to have been part of this project. And I know that the thank yous have already been made, but I'd like to add our heartfelt thanks to the Arts Council and Culture Ireland, Maura O'Keefe and Orla Flanagan, and that whole team at Once Off. Grace, you're amazing. Lian Bell for just doing such an incredible job all along the film's journey. Noelia Ruse and Trinity Griver from the ISPD end, who are just invaluable. And all the wonderful designers who were involved, of course, they were amazing. And of course, Tom, for his vision and artistry in imagining this incredible happening that has made contact with so many designers across the country and internationally. I'd also like to thank Niall Ray and Sinead O'Donnell Carey, who took great care of the important student aspect of PQ and were hugely involved in the table conversations at venues around the country. It was so important. This project has reached across generations, design disciplines and geographical locations to give us an expanded view on theatre design that will be fruitful in future plans. It's been a vivid realisation of the Society's endeavours to make contact, stir conversation and enable feedback and communication, all of which align with our strategic plan. Taking time to process the information and with the generous funding that we've received from the Arts Council, we can start to action some of these ideas that have been discussed in the next 4 years and beyond. So we look forward to that. And thank you all for being here tonight.
Thanks so much, Catherine, and thanks, so much for all of your trust and support during this process. It's also maybe worth saying that, you know, that when we get to the next 4 years, or even before we get to the end of the next 4 years, this community and ISPD is going to be thinking about PQ again. I know Pavel Kraus from PQ is here. I think Pavel is taken over from Magdalena. And it's also, you know, it's worth thinking about what that process might be, what the next version of Ireland at PQ might also be, and what kind of version of Ireland and Irish design and Irish design practice might emerge to represent Ireland in the next 4 years. Thanks so much, everyone. We'll leave it there. We won't see you in the pub right now because we have different pubs all around us, but yeah, we should get together in the pub sometime. Lian has a great idea. All the best with the year ahead, and the next one and the one after that and the one after that. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Tom.
Thank you.
Thanks everyone.
Everybody.
Thank you.